Alright, YouTube, it's time for the Occult video 68 on dreams and dream interpretation. Now, first, as far as dreams go, let me point one thing out that I think is a little bit odd. People talking about astral travel, sort of in the state between being asleep and being awake. That is, the idea, usually what's prescribed, is that you lay down on your back. You try to focus in such a way that you can remind yourself that you're asleep when you've actually more or less fallen asleep. And what you enter is a state where your consciousness is, I guess, sort of separate from your unconscious state, and so you're able to sort of explore the dream world or whatever at will. It's sort of the counterpart to astral travel in the sense of like traveling around distant parts of the world, like remote viewing or something like that. I'm not so sure that I believe that that's actually done so much as people are deluding themselves into thinking that they're doing such a thing. However, it is true. You can be aware of the fact that you're dreaming and have a fully immersive dream. That part is certainly true. That's happened to me. It's more difficult, I guess, to do it consciously than to do it for very short periods within the context of dreaming, and then, of course, you snap out of it because something happens, and then you wake up, which is always unfortunate. As far as dream interpretation goes, though, Gesundheit, kitty, my goodness. For some time, I've been interested in this subject. What I've found is that there are totally different systems regarding the interpretation of dreams, and a lot of it has to do with the time period. For instance, looking at old fortune-telling works which I've been editing, in those, marriage and death usually represent one another. So if you dream that you've died or something, you're getting married. If you dream of getting married, it means soon you'll be dead, potentially, or someone you love will be dead. We don't really necessarily see similarities in all respects between older systems of interpreting dreams and newer systems. I know, for instance, under a Mesoamerican style, like a Native American interpretation system, it's not going to be the same as a European system, and a system that's sort of from Germany isn't going to be the same as an English system or an American system. You'd have systems all around the world. I'm sure the African tribes would interpret dreams differently. Different groups, even within sort of the same ethnic enclave, would interpret them differently potentially. And certainly time matters as well. So I'm not sure that it's very helpful outside of the realm of psychology. We can look at what a going mainstream culture would see as psychological archetypes, and we can interpret dreams based thereupon. Sort of a Freudian idea or something like that. As far as having an objective sort of system to use, it really, I think it boils down more to culture than anything else. Like, for a long time, I've had dreams of bears. That is, every once in a while I have a dream. It's never quite the same, but it always involves bears. The animal, that is, not like a teddy bear or a toy bear, but the actual animal, like a grizzly bear or a black bear or something. And I always get the same feeling in these dreams. I always remember them. Most of the time, I don't remember my dreams. But whenever I have one of these bear dreams, I do remember it. And then there are a few other dreams that I've had that I've remembered. There are some that were so immersive that I thought that I might have temporarily entered some other existence and been interacting with it while unconscious. I think that that's something I can remain agnostic upon. I think it's possible. I don't know if it's particularly likely, but I like to think that it can happen. I've gotten ideas for literature from dreams. I've spoken about sickness and hell, how that originates from a dream that I had. I've written other literary materials as well that originated from dreams that I've had, and sickness and hell forthcoming, other works also in the future forthcoming. But that has happened. It gives me inspiration. These bear dreams, though, I thought were extra funny. Because tracing my ancestral lineage back, as it were, to England, which is where my ancestral line goes, my particular family, the Warwick family within England, the Warwickshire sort of emblem, the emblematic symbol of the origins of the family under a figure known as Morvidus, is actually of a bound bear and a ragged staff. That is, the tail is that Morvidus was sort of this great warrior. He was like constantly drunk and kind of angry, but he was also benevolent, so he was an okay dude for those times, for the, you know, the Dark Ages or whatever. He fucking ripped this tree out of the ground, beat a bear to death with it or something, and then he had like had it chained to this staff or something like that. They call it the Ragged Staff. What it really was essentially a stripped down tree trunk. You know, I've kind of got one behind me. There's my Ragged Staff, okay? That is actually a sapling that was strangely upended. The top of that staff was originally a root system somehow. It's actually very strange. But I found it funny because when I looked into sort of that family history, the archetype of the bear is constantly there. And the bear, depending on the system that you ask, it can represent regret. It can represent being held back, and to defeat a bear is of course to defeat obstacles that are in your way, to sort of go forward with what you want to do with your plans. It can also represent, according to some of these earlier fortune-telling systems from sort of the Enlightenment, early industrial period, it can represent a foe that's they're malevolent, but at the same time they're kind of inept, so they're not really necessarily able to hold you back. A lot of it has to do, again, with this weird overarching libertarian or Luciferian archetype that has really ruled my life for all of my life. That is, I don't necessarily fear things holding me back, but I do look for them and try to defeat them any way possible. I am ambitious. I do like doing that. It's a challenge. It can also be fun, honestly, and be amusing. So to have these dreams, going back since I was a little kid, it's not like it started lately. It's been my entire life. I found that funny. But as far as interpreting them from some objective archetypal perspective or some objective divine perspective, I think becomes a little bit more difficult, because often you have a certain culture, a certain time period, a certain religious group or spiritual order involved with designing the system by which it's interpreted. What I'd like to do is develop my own system for interpreting dreams. I think that would be something that I would certainly be willing to write up, because I'm studying this from multiple different backgrounds over the span of several centuries. I think I'm capable of synthesizing a system that's more in-depth, perhaps, than what you would get from some online site, perhaps longer and more in-depth than what you would get from some of these handbooks from the 1800s, or back as early as the late 1700s, the 18th century. So that's a little bit about dreams. Yeah, lucid dreaming is an interesting phenomenon. I'm sure that plenty of people have learned to do that. I'm not sure whether it carries over to actual, like, remote viewing, astral travel, that sort of stuff. I'm a little bit more ambivalent on that end. Dream interpretation is certainly useful, but again, you've got to keep in mind we're in a different time period from a lot of the materials written on it. You're not necessarily in the same ethnic group that was responsible for writing it. For instance, if dreaming of snow can mean something, but if you live in an area where there's never been snow, if you live in the jungles of the Congo, that interpretation doesn't really mean anything now, does it? Or dreaming of a rainforest and you're an Inuit or something. It just doesn't make sense. You have to keep in mind human limitations according to the time period and place in which they've actually existed. That's about all. Peace out.